A Fox News alert for you now. Ferguson, Missouri, descending into chaos overnight.
Meanwhile, as of this morning, police have arrested at least 29 protesters, and firefighters are still battling flames that have engulfed at least a dozen buildings, many of them businesses, local businesses, many of them total losses that may never open again.
Right, because they might not have insurance. The protesters, not only in Ferguson, rioters in Oakland setting cars on fire. In New York, NYPD Commissioner Bill Bradley, as you see, was splattered with fake blood, paint rather. Crowds also gathering in front of the White House for what remained peaceful protests, which is good news.
So after days of deliberation, this is our Fox News alert, the 12 jurors finding no probable cause in the grand jury room to charge Officer Wilson. So how did they come to that decision? And was justice served? Joining us right now is Fox News legal analyst Arthur Aidala, and Rod Wheeler, Fox News contributor, joins us from Washington. Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Rod, let's start with you. You feel that there was enough evidence that the officer should have been charged with manslaughter.
Yeah, at the very minimal, Steve, I think he should have been charged with manslaughter. But let's go back just a little bit, and I'm not so much concerned about the outcome or the findings of the grand jury. My problem with this whole thing is the fact that this case was tried before a grand jury, and this was not a jury trial. When you listen to exactly what the prosecutor said yesterday, and he laid everything out, which was great. He laid out a case that should have been presented before a jury, a trial jury, not a grand jury. And it makes me wonder, who did he go in there representing? And it also makes me wonder whether or not Officer Darren Wilson was given his due process. Because think about it. If the way that McCullough laid out this case with the evidence yesterday is the way that it went down, then if you think about it, then this case should have never went before the grand jury in the first place.
Well, that's an interesting point, Rod. The prosecutor was in a position where he's damned if he does and damned if he doesn't. He could have cherry-picked his witnesses and steered the jurors in a certain way. He could have said, you know, I'm just going to put the pro-cop witnesses in and make sure there's not an indictment, or vice versa. Instead, Rod, I think he took the best route. He threw it all in front of the grand jury and let the chips fall where they may. And if I beg to differ, if this was in front of a regular jury in a trial, there'd be a defense attorney like I was ripping those witnesses, like I am ripping those witnesses apart. There never would have been a conviction.
I totally agree with you, Arthur. But now, Arthur, the reality, and you know this as well as I do, in a grand jury proceeding, you only put your best evidence. You only put your good witnesses before the grand jury. That's how it typically is. And see, that's why Benjamin Crump made the argument, and I think it was a good argument. He made the argument, why is this prosecutor changing the way in which these situations are typically handled? We can't turn a blind eye to that argument because that is a valid point.
But Rod, let's just keep agreeing with each other this morning. What you said, which I thought was right on, is when you look at the evidence as a whole, if it was so bad, why did the prosecutor even go into the grand jury? But the thing is, he had to go into the grand jury because of political reasons, right? He couldn't just say, I looked at all the evidence and I'm not even putting this before a grand jury. But as you know, because you've testified thousands of times, that prosecutor has to live with that case.
Sure.
So if you do put the evidences a certain way where he does get indicted, well, you still got to go pay the piper down the road and stand before 12 jurors and try to get a conviction. And if you know your evidence, you cannot prove beyond a reasonable doubt those charges. Ethically, as a prosecutor, you have to go before a judge and say, look, Your Honor, I know all the evidence. There's no way I can convince 12 jurors beyond a reasonable doubt, so I'm dismissing the charges.
But, Rod, are you saying, though, that Arthur might be wrong about that the prosecutor had a stronger case than it appeared and should have actually put it in front of a jury?
No, you know, what I'm saying, Brian, is that typically with grand juries, and I've been involved in many of these cases, mostly involving homicides, you only present the information to the grand jury that's going to make your case at that time. And I think that's why we're seeing the rioting right now. You know, people think that Officer Wilson was found not guilty. That's not the case. Officer Wilson was never charged with any crime. Right. So they're rioting for the wrong reasons.
Rod, look, I was up with Shep and Megan all night, as were you on scene. My humble opinion, and you've been out there, those people who are rioting, they don't even know what's going on. There's a difference between protesters and rioting. Kudos to the people who are peacefully protesting. People breaking into a liquor store to steal a couple of bottles of gin and vodka. That's got nothing to do with Michael Brown, and it's a horrible mark on his and his family's legacy. They begged for peace. As the president's speaking, the shot that you see on TV of them trying to flip over a police car was taking place. I know you agree with me. Those are not the people who really know the facts of this case, who know the grand jury process. Those are people looking for an excuse to cause some trouble.
No, I agree with you. I totally agree with that, with you, Arthur.
Yeah, I just don't know why they made the announcement at night. They would have made it a lot easier on law enforcement if they did it during the day.
Oh, it's a difficult
You know,
situation.
look, Brian, I was peripherally involved in one of the biggest cases in the Crown Heights case, which I will tell you, before the indictment, before the verdict was announced, that there was that the guy was going to get acquitted. I will tell you, there was a tremendous amount of coordination between the district attorney's office and law enforcement as to when, how, where the announcement was going to take place to make sure there was none of these rioting, et cetera, et cetera.
And that didn't take place here.
You don't know that. In other words, we don't know who spoke to whom.
Well, it was the worst
and made the
coordination
decision.
I've ever seen.
Okay,
The National Guard
arguments were they wanted the children to be home from school, they wanted people to be home from work, and the unspoken victims here right now are all of those store owners.
Absolutely.
Black Friday is a couple of days away. They make their livings. They put kids through school and pay the mortgage, and those businesses are gone. And one of you guys said there may not be insurance to back them up.
It's too expensive.
Yeah,
everyone loses.
And
Everybody loses.
And the young individuals right now who are stuck in this mess as well, living in fear. Right.
All right. Arthur Aidala and Rod Wheeler, thank you very much. Great analysis early on this.
Thank you
Thank you,
both.
guys. Yep.